Podcasting from deep in the heart of North America, 5 influential podcasters from coast to coast come together to discuss a variety of topics from around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Power Hour!
Welcome back to Coast Power Hour. This is Michael Glenn Moore. I'm the host for this afternoon, and we have Christopher Stolle, who is also a host, who is acting as a co-host today. And he's going to start off by introducing himself and talking about his podcast, so that we know about a little bit about where he comes from and how to find his stuff.
Well, I am Christopher Stolle, and I am the host of Breaking the Fourth Wall podcast, which is part of Realm of the Mist Entertainment, which used to be a network collaboration company. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Is right off the bat, Realm of the Mist Entertainment is closing as a network company. As of today, there is no longer Realm of the Mist as a network. Realm of the Mist will continue to be a production company for Breaking the Fourth Wall. But all the subsequent in-house shows that were created by Realm of the Mist Entertainment, i.e. Breaking the Fourth Wall, After Hours, God, how many shows I used to have. All of them are being combined into one show, and that is Breaking the Fourth Wall. Breaking the Fourth Wall is going to take an iteration of no longer being just a half-hour to 45-minute interview show, and instead will be becoming a 2-hour kind of radio broadcast, best way to describe it. It'll still do interviews, but it'll do it as a segment as opposed to being the whole entire intention of the show. Now, the reason I'm closing Realm of the Mist as a network is because of the fact that I have taken over presidential responsibilities to SJ Network. I am now one of the main guys of SJ Network, given to me by Steve Joyner. There's going to be a couple of us, but we are going to be handling all that, which means that even Breaking the Fourth Wall and the subsequent Realm of the Mist channels and all that will still continue to honor our syndications. All shows that have been syndicated through Realm of the Mist will still be syndicated through SJ Network and premiered on Realm of the Mist channels, which are Breaking the Fourth Wall. So
that's where Coast to Coast Power Hour is also located now. Since we're doing video, we've been doing audio, so that's available on all podcast platforms. But if you want to find the video of Coast to Coast Power Hour, you go to Realm of the Mist YouTube.
Yes, YouTube.com/Realm of the Mist Vape is the URL if you want it, or just look up Realm of the Mist. We're the only ones there anyway. So, but yeah. So, long story short is I was struggling with having in-house shows, trying to do them all myself. I'm combining them into one show, Breaking the Fourth Wall, and taking over the network responsibilities of SJ Network. At least one of the people that's doing it to cover all syndications and everything else. But as far as what Realm of the Mist itself is producing, it will just be Breaking the Fourth Wall, and that new look, that new feel is coming in the next couple weeks.
Cool. Why don't you talk a little bit about what the Breaking the Fourth Wall is? I mean, exactly, that's an interview podcast what do you talk about on Breaking the Fourth Wall?
Well, the tagline to Breaking the Fourth Wall was always everybody's got a story. When it became a interview show, which is what its current incarnation is that I would talk to anybody from celebrity, director, author, publicist, whatever, down to a sixth grade school teacher or the guy next door who was in Vietnam or whatever. The fact of the matter is that everybody's got a story, and I think it's interesting to be able to dig in and find out about the person's story. What made them who they are? What made them choose the life they chose? You know, what funny iterations of the stories in their lives have they come across that normal people probably may not have come across? Just different stuff like that. It's a delve into the human side of every profession. In a way, I guess you could kind of say breaking the fourth wall, especially when it comes to celebrities, musicians, and stuff. It really helps to show that these guys still put on their pants one leg at a time, the same as we do. But with the reiteration of breaking the fourth wall, think of it more as a, for lack of a better term here, I don't like to use this term, but for lack of a better term, think of it as kind of a Howard Stern show, is what it's going to be. It's going to be segmented portions where we talk about funny things in the news, where we talk about certain subject matters. And of course, there will be the interview segment. I will continue to do the interviews. I'm not going to stop that. Yeah, so that's still going to be a major portion of breaking the fourth wall. But it's only going to be one of 3 or 4 segments through the whole entire show.
Will you have a co-host, or is it all you?
For the interviews, it'll probably still be all me. That's still in the work, but I'm actually one of the reasons why it's going to take a couple weeks is I am putting together a panel. So I will continue to do release just breaking the fourth wall interviews until I have a permanent panel in place. Some people that I know have good senses of humor that I get along with very well, that will be available for once a week recordings to put together the other segments and go from there.
Cool. Well, let me tell a little bit about what I do as a podcaster. I have 2 podcasts that I work on. The first one is In a City Like Yours, which is a true storytelling podcast where I invite my guests to come on and relate a story that has something that's happened to them that's changed their life in some significant way. And I deal with Steve Joyner as well. So I get a lot of guests through him. So they're mostly all artists. So what we do is, as you know, aside from talking about their personal story, we also talk about their career as an artist. I like to make sure that that happens. I'm an artist. I'm a painter and sculptor. So I really enjoy talking to other artists, and that's something that brings joy to me. And I really thank Steve Joyner for bringing me all these fantastic guests. He's been phenomenal.
Right.
The other podcast I work on is called Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour. Scott is a addiction crisis coach. He has been in the business for over 30 years and is an expert on addiction recovery. I'm not. I'm just the co-host, and I'm pretty much quiet during that recording. I'll let him take over and do everything. So I'm basically just the producer, but I also talk a little bit on the podcast. So I guess I can be considered a co-host. But anyway, those are both those podcasts, In a City Like Yours and Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour, can be found on the SJ Network, s-j-network.com, and on all major podcast platforms. And the third podcast that I work on is what we're doing today here, is Coast to Coast Power Hour. This is maybe our 5th episode, I believe. We had been doing them once a month. Now we're doing them twice a month, and we're doing video. So that's pretty exciting. And I really, I was very hesitant about doing video. We're starting to do video for Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour as well. So I'm trying to get into that realm of being visual rather than being just audio. So you have to bear with me on that.
I think video is very helpful in the podcast community, especially nowadays with the COVID crisis going on and the pandemic, and people feeling kind of alienated from each other. I've noticed a surge in video podcasting as opposed to audio, and I think it's because of the human connection. That you can actually see human faces as opposed to just hearing voices. I think that's where it's really come into play. I could be completely wrong, but from my personal experience and what I've seen since I released both audio and video of the shows that I do, I've seen a surge in video usage. on YouTube, where normally YouTube was a little bit more stagnant than the audio. And I think COVID had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I agree. As far as people wanting to see who they're listening to, that's something. I'm a big podcast fan. So before I started podcasting myself, I always want to know what the podcasters looked like. I'd Google them and try to find them. And 9 times out of 10, they didn't have any images up because a lot of podcasters like to stay anonymous. They won't give their city where they live or any personal information because they don't want to be what's it called, doxxed by crazy fans. But so yeah, I personally like seeing who I'm listening to. So I've got images of my guests on my website for in a city like yours. I've got 2 galleries, one for 2019 and the one we're working on for 2020. So you can go there to look at who the guests are. But now with Coast to Coast Power Hour, you can also go to the website, YouTube, and see us personally.
It's funny too when you say that, because I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of listening to recorded Dungeons and Dragons sessions. And one of the groups that I really really enjoy listening to is a group out of Canada called Dum Dums and Dragons. They're part of the Dum Dums and Dice production company, and I'd listen to them do that, and I did listen to them do their Star Wars show known as Dumb Scum and Villainy, which is a Star Wars RPG. And I remember like listening to their voices, and especially like one of their players. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but I mean, he sounds like Phil Hartman. Like that's his voice, So the first time I ever saw video of them playing and who was playing what character, it blew my mind, because sometimes it's just funny seeing that the faces don't match the voices.
Yeah, that is wild. I do the same thing when I'm listening to music, because I kind of you picture what the singer looks like by what his voice sounds, and then 9 times out of 10, again, it's not anything what you think.
Yeah, so I absolutely know where you're coming from with that. It's hilarious sometimes to. Well, again, when I got into podcasting, I was listening to podcasts on YouTube, and they were doing videos, and I was listening to things like Hollywood Babylon, which is Kevin Smith and Ralph Garman, or I was listening to Collider Movie Talk, and so they were doing video right off the bat, so I always knew what they looked like. It took me a while to find the audio version of podcasts, and discovering what a huge world it was. So my introduction to podcasting was video to begin with, just something I'd stumbled across one time on YouTube and got addicted to it.
Yeah, the way I listen to podcasts, and something I've done from the very beginning, is I've got to be doing something while I'm listening to podcasts. So what I do is I play solitaire on my computer and listen to podcasts. So that because of that, I never really got into going to YouTube and finding the podcasts I listen to on YouTube, which was something I didn't really know I could have done back in the day when I first started listening. Because I was listening to things like Sword and Scale and Generation Y. I was real big on true crime. So, and those guys, they don't, there are images of Mike Boudet and the Generation Y guys out there and stuff. So that was interesting because I was able to see them. And when I did, especially for the Generation Y, I saw the images of the guys, but they didn't have the names. So I picked the one I thought, okay, this must be this guy because of his voice sounds like he looks. And it turned out that later on, when I did find out their names and that matched up with their images, that was totally different than what I had in my mind. Well, we were supposed to have 2 other podcasters join us today, and it looks like they're not going to join us. So, Chris, it's just me and you today.
That's fine. It could be you and me. It's funny because when you say you were listening to podcasts and not necessarily watching it, the way I stumbled across it, I can tell you exactly how I stumbled across it. I used to be a maintenance mechanic, and for an apartment complex, and when I would work on an empty apartment just to fill the silence, while you're working, I would put on YouTube in the background, and usually it was something Star Wars. I was a Star Wars fan. That's how I discovered podcasting, because it was Collider's Jedi Council that wound up coming on for some. I forget what I was listening to. I was listening to something, some video about like theories or speculations about the Star Wars universe. This is even before The Force Awakens came out, so we were still in the original 6 movies at that point. and I was just listening to it and had it as noise in the background. And then all of a sudden, YouTube's algorithm decided the next video to play was an episode of Jedi Council. And it made me stop. I said, what the hell is this? And I listened to the whole hour episode, and then all of a sudden I'm like, going to Collider's, channel and finding all these different shows, every weekly shows of Jedi Council, and listening to them do their thing. And then I discovered they were doing movie stuff. And then that's when I was like, well, what other things can I find out here? And consequently, that's what led me to launch Breaking the Fourth Wall. But I mean, I get where you're coming from. I had to be doing something. I was never really watching the videos. I had them on in the background, sitting on like a kitchen counter while I'm working in the living room, redoing trim or or painting windowsills.
It's the mindless work that you have to be doing. It's like when I play solitaire, that's not something I really focus on. I just kind of do it. And, my hand and my brain thoughts and all that are kind of automatic. And that way I can listen to what the podcast is. I do books the same way. I like to listen to a lot of books on audio. And that's how I do that. I have to be playing solitaire at the same time as I'm listening to the books in order for me to actually comprehend. I can't just sit there with nothing going on other than listening to something. And when it comes to reading books these days, because of these medications that I'm on, they make it difficult for me to comprehend and to stay focused on reading. I listen to most of my books audio, and that's really the best way for me is to stick Alexa on and listen to a book that's on Kindle and play solitaire.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna take a moment here and I'm gonna interview Michael Moore, because I'm curious about something that he said while he was doing his podcast introduction. And I realized I've never actually interviewed you. I'm going to do it on the Coast to Coast Power Hour.
Okay, I'll see what we can say. Let's go.
The biggest thing that caught my mind that made me want to ask this question was the connection to Scott Silverman. You being a painter and an artiste and a sculptor, and him being a crisis counselor. How did you two even hook up, and even more so decide to go into podcasting together? Especially like you said with the Happy Hour podcast, you don't really say much. You're just kind of there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Steve got us in touch with each other. I don't know if I guess Scott had hired Steve to get on some podcasts and so forth. So I was one of the podcasts that Steve sent him to. Now, his addiction story is very intense, and it was about an hour long. And I released that in September 2019, which in September is Addiction Recovery Month for the year. So I had all the episodes I released in that month had to deal with addiction and recovery. So I talked to Scott, and we got a really good episode, and I was just blown away by his story and how far he's come, the depths of despair that he'd gotten to. He was, found himself on the edge of a windowsill ready to jump in New York City. He was just right there, and somebody walked into the room and said, "Scott, what are you doing?" And that stopped him. So he was that close to killing himself. And thank God he didn't, because he's really somebody who is out there for anybody. He gives out his phone number. The only person I know that gives out his personal phone number every time on every episode. He wants people to call him if they're in need, because he wants to help. And so that's very, very interesting to me. Now, later on, Scott decided that he wanted to start a podcast. So he called Steve and they were kind of, going back and forth about how that would happen. And Steve thought, well, let's talk to Michael. So they got to me, and because basically just for me to produce his show, not to be a part of it. So that's why I'm not really a vocal member of the show. Especially now. At the beginning, it was pretty much one-on-one, just Scott and me. And then we started doing interviews. So that now goes to where I stay back in the background and Scott does the interview and talks the most. So I don't really talk a lot now, but I did it first. But anyway, so Steve got us together and suggested that we call it the Happy Hour. And we looked up the Happy Hour, and that was taken by like 6 or 7 podcasts. So we just said Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour, and that, kind of made it our brand. And that is now going on, and beginning in September will also be video on YouTube under Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour. But that's how I met Scott, and I'm very pleased with the way the show has gone and the way it's going now, and I'm really excited about doing the video aspect.
That's awesome. That was the interview. I mean, I would definitely sit you down for breaking the fourth wall. We could discuss that off air. But when you stated your interconnections to the happy hour, I was like, oh wait, how's this work? We've never actually discussed it. So, yeah, so that's awesome.
Yeah, that's something I talk about freely. Also, I talk about freely. I'm bipolar, so I try to discuss that as much as possible. So I've been on several podcasts where I discuss my travels through the realm of bipolar. Being an artist, the medications that I take not only give me difficulty reading to comprehend reading and stay focused, it also has zapped my creativity. So I'm not creating my art as much as I used to. And I mean, I'll go a year without doing anything, which is really bad for me. It depresses me because being an artist is such a part of my life and it's part of my identity, and not creating is really something that hurts. But anyway, so I like to talk about that as well. So if that's interest you, we can discuss that in an episode.
Oh yeah, because I mean, as a musician, a songwriter, I know exactly what you mean. When I stopped doing live performance music and all, I couldn't stop writing. I still write lyrics to this day. I still write lyrics, even though I don't have a band or anything to promote or whatever else. I guess you can kind of say they're lyrical poems than music because they're not set to sound. They're just words. But I know what you mean. If I go too long without sitting down and writing something, it almost feels like a part of me is lost. And it really interests me that like you said, you have a hard time focusing. How badly does it affect your art? Like you're in the middle of a making a statue. I don't really know exactly what you do art wise, but you're in the middle of making a statue and you just put your tools down and walk away from it. Like it's kind of like attention deficit disorder in a sense of like, oh, look, squirrel, and you forget what you were working on. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of like that. The main thing is I don't even start. It stops me from starting. I think that if I can get started, I might be able to finish something, but I don't even start. I'm kind of wiped out because of the medications I'm on. I'm on antipsychotics and mood stabilizers. The mood stabilizers, I think, are what has given me the most difficulty. And the antipsychotics are pretty powerful in themselves, and they kind of make me groggy, and I slur my words. So when I'm talking, I sound like I have an accent, or I'm Southern, so I do have an accent, but I slur my words, and that's something that, being a podcaster, I'm like, oh my gosh, but it's not something I can control, unless I stop taking my meds, and that's not going to happen. But
that was going to be my next question, which is, I know it's a dangerous question, and obviously it's not something that I would ever recommend anybody. If you have medications, that were prescribed to you, obviously they were prescribed to you for a reason. However, the question is, what would happen if you did stop taking them?
Well, I would have an episode, either a manic episode or a depressive episode, and either one of those is not a good thing for me. I would rather not do my art than go through a huge depressive episode. I mean, the ones that I was having lasted months, depression, really deep depression, and the manic episodes would last, like a week or so, and then I'd go into a depression, and then a manic episode, and so forth. So it's just not worth it. I would like to maybe explore other medications, and I've talked to my psychiatrist about it. Maybe not the antipsychotic, but the mood stabilizer. Finding something else that would help me get me back on the track of doing my art. But we're kind of thinking, well, it's working now. You're not depressed. You're not manic. So, why change it?
But to me, it seems like it would still be kind of a quality of life question. It may be stabilizing your moods. Maybe you're not going through the depression fits or whatever else. But again, you're losing ambition. You're losing desire to do what it is you do. that seems to me as if I were a psychiatrist, that would warrant looking into other medications, because of the fact that even though I'm not having episodes, it's kind of diminishing my quality of life. Why do I care that I'm not having episodes if I can't do the things I enjoy too?
Yeah, that's true. It's just a matter of weighing out, I guess, priorities. I mean, because the depressions were so bad, and I was so close to suicide, so that's not going to be a solution to be, to kill myself. I won't be doing art then. So you kind of have to weigh it out as far as what you have to do versus what you would like to do versus what you used to do. Because I used to be very creative and produce buku's amount of work on my website. Not my website, on my Facebook, Michael Glenn Moore on Facebook. I've got some of my artwork up, and from not all of my artwork, but probably from my episodes that were very productive. And so if you want to go out there and look at that, I encourage you, and give me some feedback as well. But, one thing I also miss is participating in art events and being involved in art events. I can still go to an art opening and look at the art and everything, but it's not the same as having a piece in a show or
Right.
having a solo show. There's something about creating your work and putting it out there for people to look at and to get feedback from, how they think it looks and so forth. So that's just one thing that I do miss there as well.
I'm nowhere near an art critic in any way, shape, or form, but I will ask this: what kind of art did you produce? Like, I know painting and sculpting, but I mean, like, were you a character artist? Were you a landscape artist or abstract artist? Like, what was usually your muse when you created?
I am an abstract painter, and I do paper mache sculpture, which is what I do are totems. So they're about 6 to 7 feet tall, but they're covered in paper mache and textured, and some of them I paint and so forth. But I build structures and then cover them with paper mache. My paintings, the last few ones I've done, the last 10 or 15 or so, were 62 inches by 62 inches, which were kind of big. And they're kind of, if you know Aboriginal art, it's similar to that in that I use a lot of dots and a lot of patterns. So my art is patterned real heavily, and then within the pattern is another pattern, and so forth. It just keeps going and building on that. So there's a lot of dots and a lot of stripes or a lot of whatever, because I build pattern upon pattern upon pattern. And I wind up with when I know that it's finished, I stop and sign it, and that's about it. So, but yeah, and they were really popular, the large ones that I did. I've done smaller ones as well, that they're all gone now, but I've got some of the large ones left in my studio that haven't been sold yet. So if I ever do have another show, I can draw back on some of my older work to show again or show for the first time, because there's several pieces that I've never shown in a show in a gallery or anything. So I would definitely enjoy that, but I don't want to do anything like that until I'm creating new work. I don't want to just show my old work. I want to be able to create new work and have a show.
Well, let's choose one of those paintings, for example. You can think of whichever one you want that you have that you've done. And I really want to dig into the psyche of the artist, because there's times, again, I'm not an art critic. I can walk into the Philadelphia Art Museum and I'll look at something that's like, oh, that's pretty, or oh, that's nice. But I mean, I know there's people who actually, dig really deep into the psychology of the piece, the artwork, trying to figure out what the artist is trying to relay through the picture or whatever, you know, the inspiration behind it and all that. So let's choose one of the pattern pictures, for example. And when you started, do you have a plan in mind of like, this is what I'm trying to convey in this story, and am I getting it out and all that? Like, at the end of the day, is it literally something you want somebody to stand back and be like, well, it speaks to me about the infinity of the universe, or the struggles of modern society, or the stories that people come up with. Yeah.
Yeah. One of them that I did well, basically to answer your question, I don't start off every painting that way. Now with my sculptures, I formulate what I want the sculpture to look like in my head for days and days or even weeks before I even start doing anything. And then I
Right.
build it with wood and go from there. With my paintings, I usually start off with a large blank canvas and start working. Now, one time where I did use something that was from my own experience to make the art was I had been to Mexico with some friends of mine and got bitten by a dog. And, I was so upset because I love animals and I love dogs. And I was like, oh, I want to pet this dog. And the dog bit me on the leg. And I was freaked out because I was, I had to take rabies shots when I came
Right.
back to the States and everything. So I made a painting called Viciosos, which means vicious in Spanish. And uh, I used a stencil that I made of a snarling dog in the painting. So that's pretty much the only one that has something visually that is recognizable as something. Everything else is pretty much abstract. There are patterns and everything, but they're not recognized as anything like a face or you know in fact, the Viciosos painting is a huge face with the smile with the snarling dogs. So that's really the only one that I've done that has the aspect of saying, okay, well, people read the title and they kind of, if they understand what the story is, or they kind of think they know what the story is. And if they don't, I'm glad to tell them. But the other paintings, I'd rather people look at and kind of formulate an opinion on their own rather than base it on something that has come from me. Other than when I title the piece, that's putting something out there for them to think about. Like if I have a piece called Whole, WHOLE, rather than HOLE. So it's just
How often
yeah.
how
Go ahead.
often at a show where you've put out your work and people are sitting there and obviously making the comments like I was saying, where they're really deconstructing the piece. How many times have you stood there and say they got it, or more along the lines like, dude, you're way off?
No, I wouldn't tell them they're way off, because it's the way I look at that is that it means something to them, and that's a valid meaning. So
Right.
it can't be wrong. It's make of what you wish. I don't want to be that much in control that they have to think about this, or that I have to write a paragraph of saying, okay, this piece means this. The colors in this section represent this, or anything like that. I like for all of that to be interpreted by the viewer if possible. And I know that's a cop out about, from, what a lot of artists expect or a lot of viewers expect. But for me, I would rather not discuss my opinion on my art to limit, I just don't want to limit it for the viewer.
No, I get that. Like I said again, I don't know the art world. That's a world I've never dabbled in. And when I say art, of course, I mean there's different forms of art. So it's performance art, there's musical art and stuff like that. And those worlds I've existed in. But I mean, as far as visual artwork, paintings and sculptures, and the statue with the three chairs stacked on top of each other and having a deeper life meaning than I completely understand because I see three kitchen chairs stacked together. Like, I don't understand that. Well, I'm not dogging it in any way. I don't want to sound like I'm dogging it anyway. It's literally coming from a place of I don't know this world, so I really don't know the ins and outs and what artists hope to achieve and what art lovers or followers gain from it. So that's why I'm asking the questions I'm asking, because I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, I don't want to be considered pretentious, because I see that a lot in artists, that they come across as pretentious when they do something and they say, oh, well, this means because this means this and this and this, and oh, how deep am I that I thought of this. There's one artist that I'm familiar with who does these shopping baskets where she weaves those clip-on lights that you get from Home Depot in the orange cording. She weaves that all through in and out this shopping cart, and they go for millions of dollars. And I just don't understand that, but she's real popular and galleries buy her work and she's shown in galleries. So how does that happen? Is it because she went to school and she took, she studied art and she got a master's in art or a doctorate in art? That's not the route I went. When I went to college, I studied English and literature because I didn't want to be made to do my art. I was already an artist and I didn't want to, looking back, I probably should have double majored, but I didn't. I just, went for my English degree. But, and I'm glad I did. There wasn't much I could do with it other than teach, but I'm glad I went that route. I'm not disappointed that I didn't become an art major. And I've been asked to teach art as well in schools, and I've turned that down because I really don't want to. I just don't know how to approach it. But art is something that people. I mean, it could be really very pretentious. It can be, like you said. It's you look at something and you see three stacked chairs, and and probably you're not alone. But what took that artist to create those three stacked chairs to the gallery looking at that saying, wow, I've got to have this. That's what's always fascinated me, is that journey from the artists to the gallery or to the buyer.
Well, and I'm going to preface this in the beginning here of like art is art, and an artist is an artist. Just like a musician is a musician. It doesn't matter the level of success, quote unquote, and I'm air quotations for the audio fans. Success is success. It doesn't matter the level of it. You as a musician, if you make it out of the garage, that's success. It doesn't matter if you're only playing in a bar full of 50 people that are there for Taco Tuesday. Yes, I'm stealing from Bill and Ted's Face the Music. I don't care. Or a movie actor who only does student films. That's still your face is out there. That's success. With that preface, all right. With most of the I don't want to use the term normal, but most of the performance side of art, when you're looking at actors or you're looking at musicians, I'll use musicians because I'm a musician, so it makes sense to me. Like with the idea that music, writing and performing your own music is a success. Normally, the ultimate goal for a musician is to get the record deal, go on tours, wind up releasing, the Sgt. Pepper album or Pink Floyd's The Wall album, something that stands the test of time and winds you up into the Music Hall of Fame or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Same with, I would imagine like sports people, of course, playing the game is the ultimate success, but the ultimate goal is to wind up on a major league team and winning the championship of whatever sport that is and winding up in some Hall of Fame, or even actors getting the Oscar and in a movie that becomes timeless like Star Wars or Gone with the Wind or something like that. For an artist, for a canvas or sculptor artist, what is the ultimate goal? Is it just to sell the piece, or is it to create the Picasso and wind up in New York's art, National Art Museum, of history? And like, what is the ultimate goal usually for considered success to an artist?
Yeah, for me, there are steps to it. There's finding a gallery to represent you, finding buyers or collectors, and then ultimately a museum. So once you're collected in a museum, that's pretty much your longevity there for forever, because you'll be in their collection forever. You may not always be on the wall, maybe back in a back room somewhere, but you're still in that museum and they have your work, and they, that validates your work as being something that's important enough that a museum purchased it. So the ultimate goal, I think, is to be in a museum. And that could be any museum, really. Just if you have that credit on your resume, that helps for securing galleries, and it helps for securing collectors and so forth. Because if the collector knows that you're in a museum, they think, okay, well, this piece has value other than just being a piece of canvas with paint on it. Before that, that's all it was. It's just a piece of canvas with paint on it. But now it has value. So I'm going to buy this piece. And ultimately, being a musician, being an actor, or any of the arts, you want to be able to survive and to sustain yourself through making money with what you do. And that's the goal as well, is to be able to make money off of what you do best, what you love, and to support yourself. And so selling and things like that, that's important as well.
Have you had any pieces go into a museum or
No, unfortunately, no, that's never happened. I've had difficulty securing galleries too. And I've been told by other artists that, Michael, you should be in galleries and things. And I just haven't done that. There's a lot of work that goes into putting your art out there, to sending brochures or whatever I don't know what it is today. Back in the day, it used to be slides. You would send to galleries and they would view your slides and decide whether or not they want to represent you. Today, I imagine it's digital art, doing digital. And, that means you have to have a good digital camera to take good digital images of your work. So, I mean, there's a lot involved and a lot of money involved in doing art. There's painting, there's paints, there's canvases, there's wood. I mean, I stretch my own canvases. So I buy the canvas, I buy the wood, I buy the paint, I buy the brushes. You spend a lot of money just to do your art.
Right.
And, so it's nice to sell work, which I do. I do sell my work. And that helps me, either buy other things, like I bought, I sold a piece and I bought an air compressor so that I could have easier access to a staple gun that's an air stapler gun, and also to a nailer, so that when I build my canvas frames, I use the nailer, and when I stretch the canvas, I use the staple gun, so it's not as hard on my hands. So that was a very good investment as far as I was concerned. It was $1,000 investment that was well worth the amount that I spent.
Out of any of your pieces, most people love their work. Again, as a musician, I can name off five songs, whether completed as songs or just still lyric sheets. I can name off five that I consider to be my masterpieces. I love all my work, but there's five of them that I think are if they were ever to represent me in the annals of time, I think they would be the ones that do it. As of right now, do you think you've created your masterpiece? Have you created your Van Gogh, your Mona Lisa, your Blue Period, or do you think you're still searching for it?
I think I'm probably still searching for it. It's been so long since I've done a painting. I'm pretty sure that when I go back to painting, it's going to be something different than what I was doing before, during the last time I painted. I kind of evolve. Before I did the large 62 by 62 paintings, I was doing these large paper paintings on paper, and those kind of morphed into what the physical paintings on the canvas did. They weren't the same, but they were from that. So I'm sure that the next time I get to the canvas and I start creating that way, it'll be something new, or something similar but something new, or it could be totally in a different direction. I've been thinking about doing more abstract, expressionism, rather than doing the patterns and so forth, where there's not even a discernible pattern. It's just more of a mood of the painting. Now with the sculpture, since I kind of formulate that in my head so much before I even do it, they kind of stay the same. They're in the same vein. For some reason, it's just a different process for me to work on sculpture than it is for me to work on painting. And like I said, I do a painting and I'm in front of a blank canvas, and that's what excites me. I'm doing a sculpture, and I feel like I have to be in more control of what I'm doing, so that I know exactly, how much wood I need to buy, and what the form is going to look like before I put the paper mache on it, and what kind of surface am I going to give the paper mache before I do all that. So that's something that I work over in my head. And there are several sculptures that I haven't done yet, but they're up in my head. So hopefully at some point I will get around to creating those.
Well, I hope I have inspired you.
Well, it is inspiring to talk about it, but it's another thing to actually do it.
So I will happily defer the rest of my time back to the host of the show. I've taken over Coast and Coast long enough, but see, I proved why Breaking the Fourth Wall has to do interviews. It's kind of my thing.
Yeah. Well, we were going to talk about kids' buddy films in the 80s and 90s, but I think we've talked about 30 minutes or so, so we have about 30 minutes left to go. And our second topic was going to be school schools reopening during the COVID crisis.
Correct.
So do you want to go ahead and just forget the kids' buddy films until we get more podcasters with us, and then go ahead and go to the school crisis?
Yeah, because
Okay?
I can't forget kids buddy films, and for people that are listening, that what we mean by kids buddy films, we mean like the old 80s, 70s and 80s style films that were all about like the group of kids, like think of Lean on Me, or think of the Goonies, like those styles of movies where the kids get together and go on an adventure. And when I say kids, it's not your horror movie teenagers that are in their 30s, but we're supposed to believe they're 17. I'm talking like actual children, and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
see,
Yeah, we can move those on to another day, so we can get into.
Yeah, I'm 58, so my kids' films were in the 70s. So I've got Bad News Bears and Mighty Ducks and things like that.
Exactly.
So and then I've never seen Goonies. I've seen Stand By Me, but I tried watching Goonies, and we'll get to that. But anyway, I tried watching Goonies and just couldn't do it. It was. I didn't.
Dude, that's a disservice to yourself.
I know it. I'm going to go back and try it again. In fact, I tried it recently when I decided, I knew we were going to have this topic and Goonies would definitely come up. I thought, well, I better watch that film. And I just got bored at the very beginning. So I probably should have gone a little bit further to get the hook, so that I could watch the whole thing. But I'll give it another shot.
Do you like horror movies, like the old Universal horror monsters?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Then I recommend you watch before we have the conversation. I recommend you watch Monster Squad.
Oh, okay, cool.
That'll be the one that'll not only give you the kids buddy movie that I'm talking about, but it'll be in a genre that you understand and appreciate, where Goonies may not, because it's just a rompy adventure.
Yeah. So there's some of the films, some of the stills from Goonies. There are kind of characters in that are monstery, aren't they? Or kind of The Hills Have Eyes like characters.
You're talking about Sloth. I don't want to spoil it, but Sloth isn't necessarily a monster. He's just somebody who's had a very abusive past. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
His physical disfigurements was due to natural causes as opposed to supernatural.
Okay.
If you can call abuse natural.
Let's go ahead and start our topic with COVID, with schools reopening during COVID crisis. Something that has just happened recently. A girl in Oklahoma City was suspended for taking a photograph of the hallway in her school that was packed with kids and very few masks. What do you feel about that? How do you feel about somebody being suspended for posting a photograph that was taken negative towards the school? And that's what the school said they didn't like. They didn't like the aspect of her showing their school in a bad light. So they suspended her for 5 days. But what she was doing was trying to show that, hey, this is not going to work. These kids are not living up to their end.
I mean, I'm gonna jump very close to political on this, and I don't mean to, so I apologize right off the bat. But I think the school is schools in general, and school boards, and no matter where you're from, are way too interested in looking politically correct, looking to be perceived as decently correct, as opposed to doing what is in the best interest of the child. No, I don't agree. This woman, or this girl, should have been suspended. I don't think there should be any type of reprimand for what she did. She exposed a problem in the school, and the school should, their correct reaction would be, how do we fix this? Not, let's silence the person exposing the problem.
Have you seen that image that I'm talking about?
I have not.
Okay, well, it looks like wall-to-wall kids. I mean, there are so many kids in that hallway you couldn't move. So it's very shocking, because I thought that they were approaching the reopening in phases, like 3 days a week, this many kids come to the school, and then 3 days a week or 2 days a week, this many kids come to school, and it's staggered. But apparently in Oklahoma, they just all came at once, or there was such a big school that even the ones that they staggered is too many. you would think they would at least stagger the times that the classes change so that there won't be so many people in the hallway, rather than the bell going off at 10 a.m. and everybody, going to their next class at one time.
No, you're absolutely right. I thought they were supposed to reduce it down to like, last I heard, at least here in Philadelphia, the idea that I heard was that it was supposed to be 25% capacity, the same as like restaurants. So you would only get a quarter of the school in at any one point. And of course, that raised the question to me. It's like, well, does that mean that they lose their spring break and their summer vacation, because you got to make up the time you're losing? Because if first through third grade, for example, are Monday, and then fourth through sixth is Tuesday, and then Wednesday they shut down for cleaning, and then Thursday it's seventh and eighth graders, and then Friday is special classes, just for the sake of argument, where you're keeping less than a couple hundred kids in the school. I'm exaggerating numbers. They're not getting the attention and the time frame that is normally allotted to a school, a normal school session, which would be from 7 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, for 9 months out of the year on average. So I mean, the kids are already losing a lot anyway, and you got to trim the fat to it. And I don't like saying that, because of the fact that being an entertainer and a person who believes in the arts, one of the first things that's obviously going to be trimmed to a lot times for the reading, writing, arithmetic, and all the important stuff would be the elective things like music, art, home economics, things that are important but not as necessarily important as social studies, science, math, reading. So I get that those would be the first projects or classes to go to try to slim down time. But I don't know. A lot of it doesn't make sense to me. To me right now, and I've got my own opinions on COVID in general, but to me right now, if we're going to play it safe, it seems to me the best way to handle it is homeschooling. I wouldn't open the school. If you don't think it's safe and you don't think you could follow a curriculum that's not going to harm the children, and have them wind up losing something in turn, then the best course of action to me is just set up times at home.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody on Facebook today that I saw mentioned that a good idea that I thought was a good idea was having a television station who did 24/7 classes for people who don't have access to a computer and Wi-Fi, because most people have access to television, so they would be able to tune into this station, like 26, whatever, and
Right.
at whatever hour, and have English and or have algebra and so forth, so that they could learn. But in order to do that, it had to be nationally okay programs, and schools don't work that way. They're done by state. So I don't know how that would, huh?
Not necessarily. The way you handle it is have public broadcasting handle it. All public broadcasting is usually city or statewide, so you follow the city and state school board. Like for here we have PBS, public broadcasting systems, who usually, instead of showing Sesame Street, show your classes and find teachers that could teach and set up hours and times of like, okay, here's third grade English. Have your kids tune in at 8 o'clock from 8 to 9 for third grade English. And, they could do that and all. And I don't think that's a terrible idea, but I think I would put it in the hands of nonprofit groups.
Something like public access as well.
Yeah, like public access. So that way we could donate to help, but it's not something that some bigwig place like ABC is making money off of it. You know what I mean? So it goes back to helping the students. But the other thing you got to do too is you got to do something that needs to happen in schools, especially in colleges nowadays. You got to take opinions out of it and leave it completely facts. Part of the problems that we have in a lot of today's society is teachers are now putting their own points of view on the things they teach. And that's not okay. Like, you're allowed to have your opinion. You're allowed to have your point of view. I don't care, if it's political, if it's sexual orientation, it's whatever. If it's not cold hard facts to the curriculum at hand, then you have no business talking about it. And especially in this type of forum, I think you have to have it be as unbiased and straight down the middle neutral as you can. So that way you're not only not offending your audience, but everybody is getting the correct type of education. You can't sit there and, it always bugs me when you hear about a college professor teaching some sort of class. I don't care what class it is. And the first thing you hear about is like, well, he says, fuck Trump. Why are you saying that in the classroom? That's nobody's business. If that's your political point of view, that's your political point of view. I don't care if you're a Trump supporter or not. You're not being paid to pass your point of view to the students. You are being paid to teach that curriculum to the students. So if we're going to do that, we have to have some sort of regulation to make sure that they follow the prescribed teachings of the Board of Education for your particular district, schools, or whatever. So that way nobody is getting misinformation in their schooling. And the reason that's important right now is because this could be, if we did this could be that particular year for that student completely. And you don't want to have them misinformed going into the following year, or God forbid, if we're talking about like seniors, getting ready to go out into the real world, and the last bit of education they get is wrong.
Yeah, that is something. Something else, another statistic that really shocked me and scared me was that, 1 out of every 3 children who come down with COVID wind up in the intensive care. So we're looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of kids going to school, being around each other, and possibly passing on this virus. And the talk had been before that, what we may lose 14,000 children at the least, or at the most. It seems 1 out of 3, that would be a lot more than that. And I just don't think that it's worth taking that risk with children. I think, like you said, homeschooling or some form of being at home and doing the curriculum is really the best thing to do. But I think even Dr. Fauci has said now that school's okay. So I just don't know what to think.
If you're gonna do it, you got to do it right. It's plain and simple. If you're gonna, no matter what the idea is, the foundation of this is that the kids need to be educated. Now, whether that's the responsibility of mom and dad this year, and actually, going online and getting the curriculum from the school board and following it, releasing textbooks for download, PDF downloads, so that way you could, mentor your kids yourselves. If that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. If we do it like the public access way, like we were just speculating, then do it the way you got to do it. If we're going to go to schools, we got to do it the way that would be best interest. Because I'm sorry, the one thing that doesn't sit well with me, and I'm a parent, but even if I wasn't a parent, it wouldn't sit well to me. 1,400 kids is not acceptable. I don't care the reasoning. I agree that education is important. It's one of the most important things that children could have. But I'm not going to offer the lamb to slaughter simply because, it's an acceptable loss. We're not talking about war. We're talking about a virus. War, you expect casualties. It's a part of war. Education is not war. One child's life is too much. And it bothers me anyway, because it goes back to the misinformation thing that I was talking about with education. It's just like the misinformation before. They were talking about that kids were basically immune to COVID, that it was affecting adults, and especially elderly adults mostly, in a fatal capacity. Now, all of a sudden, 1 in 3 kids, it's like, if you don't know, don't say, is my motto, in this. And, if we're going to go to schools, if we're going to do the schools, and we're going to do the 25%, the big thing I can think of is we got to get parents and people to volunteer to be school aides. They got to come in and make sure the kids are following the rules, that they're wearing their masks, that they're staying 6 feet apart from each other, that they're following the guidelines and not goofing around and dicking around in the hallways and sneezing on each other and coughing on each other and taking the unnecessary risks that most kids, especially younger kids, are not going to take seriously anyway.
Something that has crossed my mind with all the COVID relief that the government's doing is that they haven't talked about purchasing laptops or tablets for kids who can't afford them. That would help a lot in the way of having homeschool and doing video learning, at home. If these kids who, of course, they'd have to figure out a way for them to get Wi-Fi if they don't have Wi-Fi, so that's a problem. But take your kids to Barnes and Noble or to the library and let them. Of course,
I think the library is the answer.
Yeah.
Every town has a free library. It doesn't cost anything to get a library card. And especially in this particular case, you probably don't even need a library card. Libraries already have computers.
But that's a public space, so that's kind of the same way with Barnes and Noble. I mean, not Barnes and Noble, but that other one I can't remember. The Starbucks, they have Wi-Fi usually for you to go in and free access to, and you can sit in the parking lot and access that, so you don't have to go in. And I think the library is the same way. You don't have to actually go in. You can access the Wi-Fi from outside in the parking lot. So I mean, there's ways to get to it, but a lot of these families can't afford to buy tablets for their kids. So why doesn't the government step up and say, hey, part of this plan that we're going to approve will have so much money set aside for less fortunate families to have tablets for their children?
Well, that's exactly it. And that's where I was going to go with it. Is like, well, first off, you got the public libraries for people who don't own tablets or computers. But most everybody in America has a smartphone. And a smartphone is just basically a smaller version of a tablet, especially nowadays. This thing right here in my hand, it's an Apple, by the way, for people who don't know. This thing is actually stronger than the computer I'm recording this thing on. It's actually more powerful than the computer I do the podcasting through. To me, today's society, there's no excuse why a child couldn't go online and do it, with one few exception, and that's large families. Maybe you don't have multiple computers or multiple phones for multiple children to be able to access. Well, again, that's why we go back to public access spaces like Starbucks or the public library, for them to be able to do it. But I do agree, like during the Obama administration, he tried to make it where everybody had a cell phone. So you had the Obama phone go out for a while, and stuff like that. Well, sure. How many people throw away tablets when they buy the new one or throw away last year's iPhone for the brand new one? Instead of throwing those away, donate it to education and send them out free to people.
Oh, great idea. Yeah.
There's your answer right there. We're filling up landfills with old technology that nobody's using anymore. And when I say by old technology, I mean a year, 2 years old. I'm not talking about like the Commodore 64, or the IBM Pentium 1.
I've got 2 desktops and a laptop that are out of date for me. If I knew of some place that I could donate them, that would be great. I'd definitely go for that.
I think that would be the smartest way to do it. If the Board of Education and the municipality governments turn around and just got their citizens to donate old tech to be able to be shipped out to families that do not have the equipment to be able to homeschool the way we were discussing, like through a Skype call or whatever. As long as it's powerful enough to accept internet and Skype or Zoom or whatever else, so that way the teachers can teach the students, I think that's a win. I think that's a win. I think that's an answer to the cause. And it doesn't cost anybody anything. Go drop it off at a designated center, be it a police station or a school. You know what I mean? Set up days to drop off this technology, old phones, old tablets, old laptops at a school. And then redistribute to the ones that apply for it that don't have the means to be able to go out and just buy their own.
So what does it look like in your city? You're in Philadelphia. Have schools opened yet, or is that coming up? Or
that's coming up. Here in Philadelphia, schools don't usually open until after Labor Day.
Yeah, I think Louisiana is going to be a little bit later too, because the governor just came out and said they're going to push it back because we're one of the states that have the second wave or whatever, or actually the first wave bigger, or however they're looking at now. Right. But so we're right there with Texas and Florida as far as the new cases and everything. So how about you personally? How do you deal with COVID? I know you're working. How does that happen? Do you wear a mask at work or?
No, I work outside. So, I don't, I work with one other guy and we're never near each other. So we're fine. Like I'll wear a mask when I'm dealing with a customer being a fence installer. I'll wear a mask when I'm dealing with a customer, but when I'm out actually, digging holes and pouring concrete for posts, I don't have to wear a mask. I have nobody around me, to do it. But yeah, on average, I mean, I have my points of view on masks, and I have my points of view on the COVID crisis. I don't think COVID is as bad as it's made out to be in the media. I think it's an amped up flu, for lack of a better term. Don't shoot me for it, because what I'm saying is even though I have my personal points of view, I follow the rules and regulations laid down to me for safety of others, because I do care about others. Although I don't think the mask is the 100% safety factor for COVID, I still wear one when I go into a store. I still wear one when I walk into a grocery. I still wear one when I go into a place with other people. You know
Well,
what I mean?
it's required here. The mayor came out with a rule that you had to wear anytime you go into a public space. You have to have a mask on, or you can be fined.
Yeah, that's the same. See, that's some of the things that I disagree with the COVID crisis. Is during this crisis, we let prisoners, dangerous prisoners, out of jail, out of prison, because of fear of infection from coronavirus. But you'll throw me here in Pennsylvania, you'll throw me in jail for 90 days if I don't put a mask on when I walk into a Walmart.
Well, I don't think here it's a matter of going to jail. It's just a matter of paying a fine.
Now
So
here's jail.
Oh my gosh, that's that I agree. It's kind of too far.
Well, it's hypocritical. We'll let dangerous criminals out because we don't want them to get sick. But if you won't wear a mask in a public place, we'll throw you in a place we're letting other people out of for fear of infection.
Yeah,
Makes no sense.
That's crazy.
But neither here nor there. What my point of view of the crisis and the pandemic is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that if this is what's recommended to try to help end this pandemic and let life go back to some semblance of normal, then I'm going to do it. I may not agree with it. I may not like it, but I'm still going to do it. You know what I mean? So my governor is a piece of crap. Tom Wolf is garbage, and he's completely using it for political means. He's not even hiding it. It's a political agenda to him. But he laid down the law. I'm going to follow the law, not because I agree with it, but because I'd rather err on the side of caution than know I'm right and find out that I'm not, and wind up not hurting myself. I don't care about me, but the people around me, the people I love, the people I care about. Some stranger down the street, something happened to them and it's my fault. No, I wouldn't do that. So
yeah, well, especially your kids,
especially my
and your
kids,
wife, your soon to be wife.
soon to be wife. But I still wouldn't want that on my conscience, even if it was a stranger. Somebody just down the street and I cough, and I thought it was a smoker's cough because I'm a smoker. A smoker's cough. Oh, sorry. And later on, that person dies, and that was my fault. I wouldn't want that on my conscience. You know what I mean? So to me, it's like, as much as I may not agree with a lot of the rules and regulations, it really isn't affecting me so much to still follow them. I could voice my opinion on it all day, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to follow it because I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah, that's I agree. Rather be safe than sorry. And plus, I have I live with my mother. She's 84 years old. I mean 85, and she has 1.5 lungs. So there's diabetic, high blood pressure. All the things weigh against her. So if she came down, the likelihood of them really trying to help her is probably low to begin with, because she's old. So they're gonna probably do less for her than they would for somebody who's in their 50s. I'm 58 and I have high blood pressure and diabetes, and I don't know what these medications for my bipolar, how that affects my immune and so forth. So I don't know what my chances are. That's the only thing that scares me about COVID, other than over the regular flu that we've been getting vaccines for all these years, is that it's so fatal to some people. It's almost a guarantee. And at least with the flu, you can maybe, wait it out a couple of weeks at the most, and you'll be okay. But with COVID, if it hits you badly, you may not have a couple of weeks. You may be gone
Right.
within days, and go into the hospital and have to be intubated and all of that. And then, when they intubate you, they have to give you all these powerful drugs to keep you in a coma. So it's, you're not uncomfortable with the tube going down your throat and something breathing for you. So, I mean, there's all kinds of aspects of this that scares me. But I think the main thing is that I live with my mother and I don't want her to get sick.
Well, no, you're not wrong. I mean, you know this. People on air may not, but you know this. How much did I bitch for the last 6 months that I didn't see my kids? I've got the first weekend I've had in 6 months this weekend right now, with my children because they're 11 and 10 years old. And all, and they were fearful of the virus and stuff. I mean, I went on lockdown for a couple weeks from my job when this first came out, and they really didn't know anything about it. Uh, as far as normal life, those are the things that were inconvenient to me, if you will. As far as normalcies in my life, dude, I'm a hermit. I don't go out anyway, so it really didn't bother me. The going to Walmart once a week or Acme once a week to pick up my groceries and stuff was the only time I stepped out of the house outside of like work. So it really, to me, it was just another day, and still is in that aspect. It's just the inconvenience of putting on a mask or carrying one with me, or, oh God, did I remember to grab a mask, from the house when I left, but at this point, it's kind of second nature on that. I've got a mask in my pocket right now. I'm sitting in my basement. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's, you kind of get used to it. But the inconveniences to me, the worst ones was not being able to see my kids. And with being a divorced father, I only get them every other weekend to begin. I get 48 days out of the year, to spend time with my kids. So every single weekend that I lost the COVID is a weekend I can never get back. That was the thing that bothered me the most, quite honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a hermit as well. I don't get out that much at all. We're buying all our groceries through either Walmart or Brookshire's, and I pick them up curbside. So my, being around somebody is lessened that way as well. I can't name the last time I've actually been into a store, and my mother hasn't either. She, I make her stay at home, so she hasn't been able to get out. Sometimes she goes out and she goes through drive-throughs and buys food and things like that she's craving, which worries me too. But she feels like she's safe, so there's not much I can do. She's older than I am, But
good luck telling your mom what to do.
Yeah. So okay, well,
I'm 43 years old. My mother, to this day, my mother's 64. She still scares the shit out of me. She says I do without question. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm a grown man with my own kids, but my mother tells me to clean my room. Guess what I'm doing? You know what I mean?
That's funny. Well, Chris, I guess we'll call that an end for today. We've been about an hour or so, maybe a little bit more. So I want to thank you for being here and taking time to come on the show. I wish our other two guests were able to join us, but they had things come up. So maybe next time we'll have more than two. And because our goal is to have at least 4 podcasters from the SJ Network on a show, and preferably 5 if possible. But in the last couple of weeks, we haven't really had the means to do that. Things just haven't worked out. But everybody's busy doing different things as well. So hopefully,
I think you and I discussed about changing the recording times for this to be able to fit people's schedules a little better too, as opposed to like now for people listening. We're recording this at 6 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time right now on a Saturday, and we discovered, talking to some of the people that were supposed to be involved, that a weekday schedule later at night would be more feasible for them. So I think we're going to be doing that, so that way it hopefully will unlock more potential for more of our guests.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll definitely plan that out the next time. Okay, guys. So from Coast to Coast Power Hour, this has been Michael Glenn Moore and
Christopher Stalley.
And we'll talk to you later.
Later.
The Coast to Coast Power Hour is part of the SJ Network. Go to s-j-network.com for more information.